In the 1980s, this trilogy isn't just a movie series. It's a cultural phenomenon. But what most people don't realize is that the version we know today came after a bumpy ride, dozens of rejections, and bizarre creative decisions. From fridge time machines to hidden clues and casting controversies, here are 20 weird and wild facts you probably never heard. Before it became a classic, Back to the Future was repeatedly rejected. Writer Bob Gale shopped the script to every major studio and was turned down over 40 times. Studios didn't believe audiences wanted time travel stories, and many thought the plot was too tame. Some wanted a raunchy teen comedy more like Porky's. Even when someone suggested Disney, it backfired. A Disney exec famously asked, "What's wrong with you people?" referring to the controversial subplot where Marty's young mother falls for him. The incest implication made the pitch feel way off-brand for Disney. What turned things around? Director Robert Zemeckis scored a hit with Romancing the Stone. Suddenly, studios were interested in his next project, especially with Steven Spielberg backing it. At the very start of the movie, there's a blink and you miss it moment. About 58 seconds in, when the camera pans over Doc Brown's lab, there's a small clock showing a figure dangling from a minute hand. It foreshadows the climactic clock tower scene, where Doc hangs by a wire. But there's more. That shot is a nod to the silent film Safety Last. 1923, where Harold Lloyd famously hangs from a massive clock face, an iconic cinematic reference baked into the set design. Believe it or not, Back to the Future almost had a completely different name. Spaceman from Pluto. Studio executive Sid Sheinberg thought the title needed more punch, and even suggested rewriting scenes to match. One idea was to have Marty call himself a spaceman from Pluto in the barn scene. Spielberg shut it down without confrontation. He wrote back thanking Sheinberg for his funny memo, pretending it was a joke. The suggestion quietly died after that. Yes, originally the time machine was not a car, it was a fridge. In the earliest drafts, Marty was meant to survive a nuclear blast inside a refrigerator at a test site, but concerns arose that kids might imitate the stunt and climb into real fridges. Zemeckis scrapped the idea. Eventually, they settled on the DeLorean, sleek, strange, and futuristic. Ford offered $75,000 to feature a Mustang instead, but Gale refused. "Doc Brown doesn't drive a Mustang," he said. Before Michael J. Fox became Marty McFly, the role belonged to Eric Stoltz. He shot 5 weeks of footage, but his serious tone clashed with the movie's comedic vibe. Zemeckis and Gale wanted Fox from the beginning, but had to wait for scheduling to align. Once Fox came aboard, they res-hot almost everything, costing an estimated $4 million. The official word is no, but fans believe Stoltz still appears in brief moments. One scene under scrutiny is when Marty dives into the DeLorean as the Libyans approach. Some say the figure looks taller, possibly Stoltz. Thomas F. Wilson, Biff, even mentioned that the person he punched in the diner scene wasn't Fox, but someone taller, possibly a stunt double or maybe Stoltz. Whether or not these clips remain is a point of fan obsession. Filming Back to the Future wasn't easy for Fox, who was also starring in Family Ties. For 4 months, he worked double shifts. Family Ties during the day and Back to the Future at night. He'd sleep for just 2 to 3 hours a night, shuttled between sets by drivers who sometimes had to carry him to bed. Despite the exhaustion, Fox made Marty McFly unforgettable. Remember Twin Pines Mall? After Marty travels back to 1955 and crashes into a farmer's tree, he unwittingly alters the future. When he returns to 1985, the sign reads Lone Pine Mall. It's a subtle but brilliant time travel joke. In Part 3, Doc jokingly reprimands Marty about changing the timeline, a playful callback to that pine tree incident. When Marty arrives in 1955, he smashes through a scarecrow. In one shot, the scarecrow goes flying over the DeLorean. In the next, it's somehow plastered against the windshield, a classic continuity error that die-hard fans can't unsee. In the iconic scene where Marty wears a radiation suit and blasts his dad's ears with guitar noise, the tape reads, Edward Van Halen. That's not a band track. It's a custom recording Eddie did himself. The rest of the band denied permission to use Van Halen music. But Eddie was all in. He recorded a short burst of guitar chaos just for the scene. When Marty crashes into a church in 1985, a drunken man mutters, "Crazy drunk driver." Marty calls him Red, the same Red Thomas who was running for mayor in 1955. Somewhere along the line, Red's political dreams died, and he ended up sleeping on benches. Meanwhile, Goldie Wilson, whom Marty encouraged in 1955, does become mayor. A full-circle moment. In 1885, Jeb Statler sold horses. In 1985, his descendants owned Statler Toda, where Marty fantasizes about owning a 4x4. It's a quiet detail showing how the town evolved over generations. In Part 2, Old Biff gives young Biff a sports almanac. To prove it's real, he predicts a UCLA comeback. The radio confirms UCLA wins 19-17 over Washington. It wasn't made up. UCLA really did win by that score on November 12, 1955, with a last-minute field goal by Jim Decker. In the U.S., Lorraine calls Marty Calvin Klein based on his underwear, but in the French dub, she calls him Pierre Cardin. Why? Calvin Klein wasn't a household name in France then. They swapped it for a brand locals would recognize. Same joke, different label. When setting up the lightning experiment, Doc is confronted by a cop asking for a permit. Doc doesn't have one, so he pulls out cash and hands it over. It's a subtle background moment, but it shows how far Doc will go to preserve his plan. In Part 2, Doc shows Marty a USA Today from October 22, 2015. One headline reads, "Cubs sweep series in 5. This was a joke. The Cubs hadn't won a World Series since 1908. Ironically, they finally did win in 2016. Also funny, the paper refers to Queen Diana and puts Marty Jr. S. crimes in the sports section. The internet was missed entirely, but the rapid-fire news scrolls were oddly prophetic. Crispin Glover, who played George McFly, didn't return for the sequels. The studio used old footage in a body double, even hanging George upside down in one scene to mask the replacement. Glover declined to return due to creative differences and pay disputes. He also didn't agree with the ending's message, that success equals money. After the studio used his likeness anyway, he sued, which helped change Hollywood's rules around actor image rights. Spielberg always supported Back to the Future, but Zemeckis and Gale were hesitant to work with him again after a few flops. When Zemeckis scored a win with Romancing the Stone, they felt confident enough to revisit the script. With Spielberg's blessing, the rest is history. By the mid-'80s, the DeLorean DMC 12 was considered a failed car. Then Back to the Future made it an icon. John DeLorean even wrote a letter thanking Zemeckis for reviving his dream in such a positive way. The car lived on as a pop culture legend. The entire story began when Bob Gale found his father's high school yearbook and wondered, would we have been friends if we were the same age? That spark of curiosity became the foundation for a time travel movie about a teen who meets his young parents. The rest unfolded with immense care. Zemeckis' attention to detail became legendary, and actors loved working with him. Fox praised how well they clicked. Leah Thompson admired his focus. Tom Wilson described him as a human computer. Together, they built a time-traveling tale that still resonates decades later. Which of these facts surprised you the most? If you're a Back to the Future fan, hit like, share the flux capacitor, and subscribe to the timeline. And don't forget to check out other videos on your screen. The past and future awaits. After the initial script was turned down over 40 times, Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis didn't give up. The pair went back to rewrite again and again, refining the story. Initially, the time travel mechanics were clunky. They leaned on accidental happenings, unclear rules, and narrative patches. Over successive drafts, they tightened the logic. Lightning, 1.21 gigawatts, a precise timeline, predictable outcomes. Spielberg's support was transformational, not just via reputation, but creatively. He wasn't a passive executive. He provided active input on pacing, emotional beats, and character arcs. One of his suggestions was to balance the sci-fi with family drama. Marty's relationship with his parents, George's transformation, Lorraine's loyalty. The script evolved into a generational story, as much as a time machine one. Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, He wasn't the obvious choice at first. Producers considered more conventional actors. But Lloyd's energy, part manic scientist, part soft-hearted friend, won everyone over. They liked how he infused eccentricity with sincerity. Lloyd reportedly said his inspiration was Doc from a John Hughes film, channeled through Einstein's curiosity. Michael J. Fox versus Eric Stoltz. It wasn't his tone that made Stoltz seem out of place. He reportedly interpreted Marty too maturely, too anchored. Fox brought levity, spontaneity, and teen angst mixed with humor. As production shifted from Stoltz to Fox, the tone lightened. Screen tests confirmed it. Fox gave Marty that awkward charm, the frustration, the grin. Reshoots extended the schedule and the budget, but the result was worth it. Fox's chemistry with Lloyd was immediate. On-set stories describe improvisations. Marty mocking Doc's coat, Doc spooking Marty with radio beeps. They played off each other in scenes not in the script. Spielberg encouraged that, let them riff. Those moments became memorable. Writer Gale rejected Ford's Mustang off for cold. He felt the DeLorean was a character. Its futuristic look, stainless steel shine, gull-wing doors. It suggested alien tech, weird science. It wasn't just a car, it was an idea walking. Fans loved it immediately. In real life, demand for DeLorean skyrocketed after the movie. Sales spiked. Collectors sprang up. A decade later, nostalgia turned them into cult artifacts. Even planned Houdini documentaries credit the film with propelling the car into the cultural zeitgeist. Special effects and practical stunts in Back to the Future were cutting edge in 1984. The lightning effects of the clock tower were created with motion-controlled camera rigs, miniatures, and optical compositing. They overlaid multiple exposures, sparks, neon lighting, and audiences saw authenticity. The famous flux capacitor hum was a custom sound put together from oscillating vintage electronics and drum machine beats. Foley artists later said it was fun to record. Doc's machine had personality. On-set anecdotes tell of accidental chaos. Actors nearly tripping over wires during effects cues, or extras doubling for stunt scenes and tire smoke. The clock tower's face was a 60-foot prop, and they built a pulley system for Lloyd to swing from it. Safety harnesses were disguised in costume layers. Reportedly, some wires snapped, causing Lloyd to momentarily jolt. He improvised a scream that made it into the film. Aside from the scarecrow glitch, there were dozens of tiny continuity and Easter egg details. Hill Valley newspaper stands. In multiple scenes, the headline font changes slightly, as though printed by different types of printers. Fans notice a period font shift between decades. Doc's lab equipment. Tools in the background, voltmeter readings, taped warnings, change slightly when revisited, showing updated experiments. Sports event posters. At the school dance, posters for Enchantment Under the Sea subtly include frames of dancing ghosts because part of the 1955 dance was ghostly in-universe. Its subtle building background. Fan sleuths compiled wiki-size breakdowns, which clock corresponds to which scene, the minute hand angle, etc. The clock-hanging figure prop, it reappears in other sets, rotated, suggesting multiple place clues. The score, nostalgia, and emotional tone. Alan Silvestri's film score played huge part in elevating the emotional arc. The triumphant time marches on, and synth reverb on emotional cues accentuated tension. Producers played with leitmotifs. Marty's theme versus love theme for Lorraine versus Doc's motif. It subtly guided audience feelings. When he escaped the Libyans, Silvestri boosted tempo. When Marty first sees his teen parents, the music shifted to romantic tension. The zeitgeist of 80s culture, Walkmen, high school dances, soda counters, anchored the film. Yet, the design team made nostalgia feel authentic. Fonts, cars, even soda cups. They insisted on using real 1955 corporate typography, not stylized, making the past feel real. Now, fans replicate Enchantment Under the Sea t-shirts dating them 1955. Without that detail focus, the nostalgia would have felt cheap. After the enormous success, it grossed over $381 million worldwide. Sequels were inevitable, but writing them was tricky. They needed to justify time travel again without repeating the same beat. Both sequels reused original actors except Crispin Glover. They reshot blurred faces, crop shots, punitive choices. Glover's lawsuit led to a landmark court case on personality rights. After that, studios became more careful about residency rights and likeness compensation. Back to the Future became more than a movie. It was reference and touchpoint. Humorous songs and parodies. The Simpsons spoofed Biff's alternate timeline. Family Guy parodied the DeLorean chase. Conventions and fan events. BTTF Day, October 21st, 2015, was celebrated worldwide with Blu-ray re-releases, DeLorean rallies, Suedo flux capacitor installations. Fans recreated the mall parking lot for a day, complete with replica DeLorean speeding 88 miles per hour, using special effects. Merchandise. From chess pieces resembling Doc and Marty, to pinball machines, Lego sets, collectible watches. The film's Universal licensing team maximized the long tail of merchandising without oversaturating. Academic interest. Physics professors used the movie to teach time travel paradoxes. Grandfather paradox, bootstrap paradox. Film scholars analyze its narrative structure. The Christian Campbell genealogical loop combines ancestor causality with post-causality storytelling. Modern viewpoints. What happens when you watch it today? Netflix and Disney Plus streaming made Back to the Future accessible to younger generations. Modern viewers sometimes question the incest subplot. Though it's handled delicately in the story, some younger viewers are unsettled by Lorraine's teenage crush on Marty. But Gale and Zemeckis framed it as a comedic misunderstanding, quickly redirected by Marty's departure. Scientific accuracy. No one expects perfect physics, but fans point out mismatched calculations. 1.21 gigawatts is roughly untenable. Lightning strike precision improbable. Yet, the film never claims realism. It's emotional logic, not scientific logic. What still holds up? Character arcs. George McFly's metamorphosis is one of the most uplifting story arcs in film. Awkward bully geek who becomes proud writer. Humor and pacing. The quick cuts, pop songs, Chuck Berry's Johnny B. Good at the dance. Visual gags. They still feel fresh. Themes of family, courage, agency. Marty influences his parents not by grand gestures, but acts of kindness. Standing up to Biff, encouraging George to fight back. From a script rejected over 40 times to the movie that defined the 1980s, and continues to define nostalgia and fiction. Back to the Future is a rare blend of sharp writing, inventive design, and perfect casting. Zemeckis' vision married Spielberg's confidence and Gale's heartfelt concepts. Through reshoots, rewrites, and reimaginings, they sculpted a world that feels both fantastical and lived in. If you've seen it dozens of times, maybe you pause at the scarecrow glitch, or rewind to hear Doc's humming wires. Maybe you note when youthful George refuses to dance, or when Biff's smirk lingers just a hair too long. That's the magic. They built a film that rewards repeated watches. So when you fire up the DeLorean or just pop in the Blu-ray, remember, every prop, every silent clock, every clip of newsprint is there by design or by metaphor. Because this film isn't merely about time travel. It's about the choices that define us, the courage we find when pushed, and the idea that maybe, just maybe, you can fix what once went wrong.